Hey guys, Pat here. So we're here to do our weekend box office report for the weekend of August 4th through the 6th, 2017. If you don't know why I talk about the box office on Sundays, it's not only to inform people about how the box office works, but also if you follow the patterns, what's making money, what's losing money, you can typically follow the patterns for what Hollywood's going to make in the future. They're going to make more movies like this, less movies like this. This franchise is going to become the thing. This franchise is dead. Always follow the money. And a lot of people don't know how budgets work and marketing and percentages and how much percentage the studio gets from the ticket sales and the movie theater chains get. So a lot of that factors in, and I'm just trying to help people understand a little bit better because people debate the box office so much and it seems like they don't know how intricate it is. They think, oh, a film passed its budget. It's a hit. But that's really not how it works. There's a lot more to it than that. So we're going to look at the top 5 and some other films. We're going to save number 1 because that's the big one of the week to talk about. We're going to try to get through the other ones a little bit faster. If you're new to the channel and just subscribed recently, thank you for joining the team. And I hope you enjoyed this live stream. And if you catch it later, leave your comments down and tell me what you think about it and what movie and the movies and all that. And we can have a discussion about it later. So let's just hop right in. Number 5, Kidnap, starring Halle Berry, who seems to star in nothing but movies like this. Like, look at Halle Berry's last movies, like, besides Days of Future Past, The Call, Kidnap, Dark Tide, Perfect Stranger. Like, she always stars in a film with the title like that. To her credit, 10 million really isn't that bad. I mean, I gotta be fair here, like, 10 million opening weekend for a movie that had really bad marketing. I don't know what the reviews were for this movie. I'm going to have to go look that the fuck up. I have no idea what the reviews are. 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay. So, it's a film that didn't get great reviews. It didn't have a big marketing push from what I saw, and I heard nobody talk about this movie. But Halle Berry, she still was able to pull in 10 million despite that. So, I mean, that's not a huge opening, but you can't say it's a disaster simply because, you know, it could have been a lot worse. A lot of other movies opened to 3-4 million, so not much to say about this. I guess it could make 20 mil domestic or a little bit more. It's not a hit, so that's about it. Let's move on to Girls Trip, though. So I said this about the last 2 weeks. Girls Trip is just a hit. I won't reiterate what I already made a point about over and over, but basically Malcolm D. Lee, black director, black cast. It was very clever to counter-program with this film to try to go after the black female demographic, 25 to 45, or older even. And this movie branched out, and it's had 3 good weekends in a row. It opened to 31 million, and then its second weekend was 19 million, which was the 37% decline, which is great. And then 41% decline, which is a little steeper, but still, 11 million. I mean, this is going to gross $100 million at the domestic box office. It's a certainty now, and that's a big deal. It might even make a little bit more. And for Queen Latifah, I don't think she's been in a hit movie in a while, right? No, she hasn't been in like a movie that was like that she drove that was a hit. So this is a pretty big deal for her. Jada Pinkett Smith, the director. This is going to be his biggest film. All of his other films just kind of stayed under 100 million, but this film's going to pass it. So From a studio standpoint, this is a big success. From a filmmaking standpoint, this is probably better than what they hoped it would do. The reviews are strong. It's hard to knock this movie. It's only got a $19 million budget. There might be some back-end pay for the actresses, but even then, this is kind of like a bad mom situation. It's just a hit. And it shows that the female-driven comedy isn't dead, even though Rough Night or Ghostbusters might make you think that. It's just the right kind of female comedy that does well. You have to be intelligent with how you do these things. And Girls Trip is a studio doing their job right. Number 3, the Emoji Movie. Oh my god. So, I have an Emoji Movie review coming out tomorrow on this channel. I'm going to see the movie today. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to go see it, and I'm going to have a review up tomorrow. So get ready for that. So get excited. Yay! I'm going to go watch the Emoji Movie by Sony. So the history of this movie was weird. A lot of people thought that this movie was a result of them canceling Genndy Tartakovsky's Popeye, but that's not true. In fact, I've read that they have Tartakovsky's Hotel Transylvania short film in front of this movie. Basically what happened is with the Emoji Movie, they were trying to tap into the audience of Wreck-It Ralph or Inside Out, maybe even Zootopia, but, you know, it isn't panning out. It's not a bomb. And you can't say that, but it's a $50 million animated film. That's cheap for an animated film. It looked like a cheap animated film. The reviews are abysmal. I think this has 8% on Rotten Tomatoes, but that's beyond the point. That film Home had terrible reviews, and Boss Baby, and those are both huge hits. But this didn't break out like those. With a $24 million opening weekend, a second weekend drop of 49% is very steep for an animated film. If this wasn't an animated film, that drop wouldn't be horrible. But you have to understand, most animated films stay in the 30% percentage range, you know. So this is not good. This makes it seem like the movie kind of came and went after opening weekend. I don't know where it's going to tap out. It's not going to make $100 million. And I think the movie had the lowest opening weekend for a movie released in 4,000 theaters. You gotta understand, they released this in 4,075 theaters to get that $24 million opening weekend. They could have released this in 3,000 theaters and probably got the same numbers. So they really tried to push this. Sony put a lot into the marketing. I think they thought this could break out and be a big hit, like the kind of film that would make $200 million domestic. And you're like, oh, but they didn't spend a lot on the budget. That doesn't mean they didn't think it was going to break out. Lego Movie was a film that studio took a risk on. They didn't put a lot of money into, and ended up being a huge hit. It ended up making $470 million worldwide. So, you know, this film could have broke out like that had it been a great movie, or had it been an idea that people could have jumped on. But it kind of felt a little outdated, like emojis. Are emojis really as relevant now as they were, like, say, a year ago or 2 years ago in popularity? I'm not saying that people don't still use emojis, but like, how trendy are emojis for little kids? Are little kids like, oh man, I gotta go see the Emoji Movie? But it still hasn't passed its budget domestically. And at the foreign box office, I don't know how many markets it's been released in yet, but it's only done $12 million. So I guess the $70 million domestic total's not out of the question, although I don't know how close they're going to get to that. And worldwide, it might make $100 million and a little bit more than that, but it has to be said, this isn't a hit. Sony's going to make a profit off of it, obviously, in home video, but really, they probably would have been better off just making something else, because all they did was get some people together, make this movie, put $50 million price tag on it, and then they just have very mediocre box office numbers. You know, Illumination, the guys behind Despicable Me and Minions, look at this. They put $80 million into their film. They kind of did the same thing. It's made $880 million worldwide. That's the difference. This is going to make its studio like $300 million in profit. The Emoji Movie, on the other hand, I don't see that's making them more than... I mean, they'll make a profit, but this isn't a $100 million profit film. No fucking way. Just not happening. Not happening with the box office. I don't know. I mean, it's Sony. I think Amy Pascal was still involved with this before she was let go from Sony, although I have to clarify for people. In my Dark Tower vid, I think people misread it. They thought I was saying Amy Pascal produced Dark Tower. I was never saying that. I was just saying that Amy Pascal was involved in Sony and was involved with a lot of shit that brought the studio down that resulted later in Dark Tower with Tom Rothman and MRC. Because you understand, Amy Pascal had a hand in this movie. she has a hand in the current Spider-Man films, and she has her own production company, and Sony still distributes her films and works with her. So it's not like she's not working with Sony. She's just not the chairman of Sony anymore. But she's still a major producer and has influence. I think she was involved with this, though, because when they were working on this, she was still at the company. This felt like they rushed this to get this out. I mean, I could be wrong, but it just... maybe I'll go see it and I'll be blown away. But God, it's only 86 minutes. It's not even that long of a movie. And, I mean, they couldn't even get any A-listers. Patrick Stewart's the biggest name on this list. I love Jennifer Coolidge, but come on. Maya Rudolph, she hasn't been big since Saturday Night Live. TJ Miller, he's probably the biggest name right now, but he's not like a box office star. Everyone's just like, oh, he's that guy from Silicon Valley and Deadpool. James Corden. I mean, Jesus Christ. Yeah, Emoji Movie's not connecting with audiences. Hold on, let me get a little bit of coffee here, my voice. Alright. So, let's move on to Dunkirk, because I don't really know what to say about Emoji Movie. Dunkirk had a great weekend. This is an awesome weekend. A 33% drop. That's terrific. For a war film, for a genre film, for a busy summer, because this has been a busy summer. A lot of films got hurt in their second weekend by the busy summer, or even a third weekend. War for the Planet of the Apes example. For example, this film came out, busy weekend. You know, I think it just got in a crowded summer, so 62% drop, 49% drop, 42% drop. Really hasn't had a good weekend hold once. So the film was very front-loaded, and its domestic total hasn't even came close to its budget yet. And even on a worldwide basis, this thing hasn't broke even yet, because you have to include marketing and all that. Now, Spider-Man, for instance, which some people seem to think I'm calling a bomb, which I'm not. I've never said this movie's a bomb. The budget's $175 million. It's made $670 million worldwide. This film's made profit. Sony's going to make $100 million profit off this movie. I was just trying to explain to people that it wasn't that long ago that the Spider-Man franchise was a $1 billion franchise. And now, with Robert Downey Jr. in their movie, Iron Man, the biggest actor in the world, like, you have to understand, this guy being in this movie, look at these totals, 400 mil, 460 mil, 400 mil, 600, 100, I mean, this is guys in the Sherlock Holmes franchise, the Iron Man franchise, and these Avenger films. I mean, his worldwide box office is $9.4 billion. Okay, Robert Downey Jr. is not a nobody. So that's all I'm saying. You take him out of this, I don't think this film would have made $300 million domestically. The budget probably would have still been $150 million, $160 million. And I don't think worldwide it would have made much more than $600 million. That doesn't mean it would have been a bomb. It still would have been a hit. But Amazing Spider-Man with inflation made $300 million domestic and over $800 million worldwide. It made $757 million in 2012. So if this film clears $800 million worldwide, which it should do with China, China's coming out and it's going to be a big market. That means this film's doing about the same business that Amazing Spider-Man 1 did in 2012. And people don't believe me about this. I don't know why people argue about this. Once again, I'm not saying this film's a bomb. Not at all. In fact, the opposite. Because Marvel came in and budgeted this well, the budget's very conservative and well thought out. They could have put more than $200 million into this film. And all the recent Spider-Man films have had insanely inflated budget. Every Spider-Man film cost $200 million to make from Spider-Man 2 up until this film. This is the first film in the series in a while since the first one to have a budget like this. So Marvel was conservative with the budget, and they were able to save this franchise. I'm thinking Sony might sell Spider-Man. Let me just say that. I think at this point, they don't have the Spider-Man franchise. This is no longer their franchise. All of this box office seems to scream Marvel fans, Iron Man, Downey Jr., MCU tie-in, the Civil War. I don't know. I think Sony might sell... And you gotta understand, Sony doesn't get the merchandising off Spider-Man. Marvel owns the merchandising rights. So all the toys, all the backpacks, t-shirts that they sell from this movie, Marvel gets that money. So let's say Sony makes $100 million off this movie, right, from the box office. They're not going to get the hundreds of millions from the merchandise. That goes to Marvel. Then Marvel gets Tom Holland in the Avengers films. So in this deal, Marvel gets all the benefits, and all Sony gets is to keep the Spider-Man franchise alive and get, you know, the trickle-down effect of Marvel money. I mean, if this film had made $1 billion, then maybe you could go, all right, Sony made a great deal. This was an awesome thing for them. All this is another studio made a film for them. Marvel made this movie, basically. Kevin Feige was involved. It's got the Marvel stamp all over it, the way the director was hired and put together. So Marvel basically made this film, and even with that, it's doing Marvel numbers. I mean, this is doing what you would expect from a Marvel Spider-Man film, from an MCU Spider-Man film. It's not doing anything better than that, and it's not doing worse. Sony either wanted better or worse, so they could go to Marvel like, well, hey, even you guys can't fix this. For Sony, what the fuck? I don't know why that popped up. For Sony, all this is they basically showed how they killed a franchise. They had a franchise. Raimi's original Spider-Man trilogy, each one of those films with inflation made $1 billion. Each one of them, because they each made over 800 million worldwide. So if you did inflation with the box, they would be well over $1 billion, especially Spider-Man 1. That film made like $500 million domestically. Now, don't get me wrong, there wasn't as many comic book films since then, and the reboot of Spider-Man killed the brand a bit. I think this is more of a Batman Begins effect from Batman and Robin. Amazing Spider-Man 2 was so fucking awful that people lost a lot of goodwill towards Spider-Man. But still, once again, I've never said this movie was a bomb, or that it's not performing well, or that it's not a hit. I'm talking in the context of Sony. Sony isn't winning that well in this deal. All Sony's getting out of this is profit from one of their movies. This doesn't save all the bombs they had throughout the year, or the disappointments they're having from other films. This doesn't save their studio. This doesn't prevent them from losing money. They've already lost money on this quarter, and they're going to keep losing money throughout the year. Their stock isn't going up. This movie's not going to save the company. This movie would have had to make, like I said, over $1 billion or more to be that kind of movie for Sony, where they go, okay, we have something. They don't really have anything. All they have is another Marvel franchise. This is Marvel's franchise. All they really have is people going, oh, look, a new Marvel Spider-Man film. I'm going to go see that and then see him in the Avengers movies. I mean, this doesn't guarantee the next Spider-Man film's going to make $1 billion. That doesn't, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 shows us that just because you have a popular first film doesn't mean the sequel's going to blow up and do so much better. It only made about $100 million more than the first Guardians of the Galaxy. So really, if we go back, though, look at Amazing Spider-Man, right? This box office total. Now, see, there's the difference. The budget for this was insane. They spent way too much money on this goddamn movie. That was fucking nuts. But like I said, if you go look at inflation, that film made $300 million, $299, and it would have made over $800 million worldwide. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's a little different, but that film made $700 million worldwide still, and that film got shit reviews. So, that's the thing. Even when a Spider-Man film gets terrible reviews or gets mixed reception like this one, it still typically does these kinds of numbers. Spider-Man's brand always does 700, 800 million. It's consistent. So, with the Iron Man tie-in, they were only able to do the typical Spider-Man numbers. Now, to this film's credit, it's been holding better the last 2 weeks. These last 2 weeks, these are much better holds. 13 million, 8 million from a 40%, 33. That second weekend, 62% drop really hurt this movie. Made it look front-loaded. But, yeah, it's a hit, but it's not enough of a hit. That's the thing. It's not enough of a hit for Sony. It's not enough of a hit to really change anything. All this is Marvel doing what Marvel does. They make a film, they budget it well, it makes a profit, they set up their Avengers film, and then the Avengers film makes huge money, and then they start another phase. That's all this really is. So, if anything, this is more of a success for the brand of Marvel than it is for Sony. Because Sony already had Spider-Man films that were making 400 million, or 300 million, or 700 million worldwide. And now their new Spider-Man film's doing that. And, you know, that's all I'm trying to say, people, is that Sony killed this brand. They could have nurtured this brand and kept this $1 billion franchise and not had to make a deal with Marvel. I like the deal with Marvel. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I preferred this deal. I'm just saying Sony fucked up. Sony had Spider-Man, And now it seems like in the near future, it wouldn't be out of the question to say Sony would sell Spider-Man off to Marvel for a big payday and try to do something else. I'm not sure if Sony Pictures is going to be surviving in the next few years. They've had too many failures, and one film doesn't save a studio unless it's like a movie that makes a huge profit. Like if this made the studio a few $100 million, that would be good. But at most, they're going to make probably $100 million, a little bit more than that. You know, if you go look at the percentage for like a Doctor Strange, that made Marvel about $120 million. I'd say that's where this is going to round off, like $120 million for Marvel. But, I mean for Sony, not Marvel. But at the end of the day, to have Robert Downey Jr. in your movie, I mean, one of the biggest actors in the world playing Tony Stark, his most famous character, and he's in all of the marketing. So like I said, once again, take Tony Stark out of this movie. Before you come and argue with me about it. Take Tony Stark out of this movie. This total right here, it wouldn't even be close. So that's a bad sign for Sony. Not for Marvel, for Sony. And their shares, you know, you got to look at the quarters and the shares. Sony shares are down. The quarter was bad. They're losing money. I think they had like a $187 million loss. So Spider-Man's not saving the studio despite being, you know, a hit. I mean, it's a hit movie. It's doing well. It's not doing like Wonder Woman numbers. Wonder Woman's going to pass 400 million worldwide and be the biggest film of the summer and make 400 mil domestic and 800 mil worldwide on a $149 million budget. And the weekend drops for Wonder Woman were way smaller. Look at this, 29, 39, 36, 37, 30, 32, 27, 29% drop. And it had an opening weekend that was less than Spider-Man. So this just shows you that word of mouth and marketing and how you handle a brand, even with WB, can result in a major hit that they're going to make a shitload of money off of. This is a franchise starter. This is a film that could kick off a Wonder Woman sequel that makes $1 billion. I'm not really sure about that with Spider-Man Homecoming. I don't know if the next Spider-Man film is going to do much better than this. I think they've kind of tapped out Spider-Man simply because Sony killed the brand recognition. They didn't take care of it, and they hurt the brand. It's up to Marvel to try and save the brand that Sony ruined. And we have to keep bringing that up. Sony ruined what was Spider-Man. Spider-Man was by far the most popular Marvel character. It wasn't even close. He's still the most popular Marvel character. Him and Deadpool, it's not even close to the sales they bring in. But, you know, Sony didn't take care of it. You know, look at Deadpool's numbers, right? Let's bring up Deadpool. Because this is just to reiterate my point. Deadpool cost $58 million and made $363 million domestic and $783 million worldwide. Okay, this film made $330 million for the studio, okay? This is what Spider-Man could be bringing in. Spider-Man could be doing these kinds of numbers, like this kind of domestic total in a $130 million opening weekend. It's just that they fucked up Spider-Man. Spider-Man's just as popular as Deadpool. It's just they screwed him over. Sony made those amazing Spider-Man films, and then people got confused by the time this came out. Despite what you could say about Fox, it actually benefited them waiting to make the Deadpool movie. Had they made it years ago, I don't know if it would have done as well. It was because they spent years waiting on it and the hype built up and we knew Ryan Reynolds struggled to make it, that I think all that goodwill resulted in this like big movie and now a franchise. The next Deadpool film could definitely make $1 billion. Easily. So, you know, you got to look at this. Deadpool's outperforming Spider-Man. And Fox is spending a lot less money than Sony is. So that has to be considered. And Wonder Woman's doing better than Spider-Man. So, you know, Sony's not in the main competition. They're doing good, but they're not competing with Marvel. They're not competing with Fox. And they're not even competing with WB. So that's kind of like, War for the Planet of the Apes. This is one of the biggest disappointments of the summer. Every drop over the weekend's not been good. The budget being $150 million, they at least had $50 million in marketing, if not more. So they probably have over $200 million in this movie. They haven't made that back. This film would probably need to make $400 million worldwide to break even. I don't know if it's going to make that. I hate saying that. I see it passing $300 million worldwide, but you gotta understand, the last Apes movie made $700 million. Okay, it made $710 million off this budget, and it brought in the studio like $180 million in profit. I'm not going to call this a bomb, because, you know, I don't know all the factors yet, but as of right now, this is kind of a bomb. Only for the fact that you have to look at it contextually. You went from a film that made 481 million worldwide with a $54 million opening weekend to a second film that opened at 72 million to 710 million worldwide. Then you went to a third film that had a slightly lower budget than the second film, and it's scratching to make 300 million worldwide. So this franchise is dead. This was a bad release date. I think the marketing for this film was awful. I said that months ago. They made this film look too much like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It looked like the same movie. It looked like Matt Reeves made the same movie. The marketing was the same. The thing was, Dawn's marketing was completely different from Rise. This movie just made it look like, hey, did you like Dawn? You want to watch the same movie again? I mean, that's really, the marketing was so similar, it didn't branch out. They killed the momentum of this franchise, and I think maybe they waited too long for a sequel. The release date was bad. The distributor handled this horribly. Bad release date, bad marketing. Because you have a film that's widely critically acclaimed. It's one of the best reviewed films of the year. It's got like 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and 82 on Metacritic. It might even get a couple Oscar nominations, right? You have a film that's been universally praised across the board. They were pretty conservative with the budget, considering it's the third in a trilogy. And these numbers are not good. And Matt Reeves is going on to do the Batman. Don't get me wrong, these numbers wouldn't be bad for other films. But a third film in a trilogy that's made 700 million worldwide, I mean, on the low end, you would want this to make at least 500 million worldwide. This isn't going to do that. Like I said, I don't even know if this is going to break even. So this has definitely got to go down. I mean, I could say what I want about Spider-Man. War for the Planet of the Apes is a disaster. This was an absolute disaster at the box office. They would have been better off to wait to release this later in the year or something. I think they would have done much better waiting to release this in like September or something. This just came and went in the summer. It did not last. I mean, even this total, like, you're like, well, it still made over 100 million. That's just the base Planet of the Apes fans. That's just the base fan base. They did not branch this out at all. And if anything, the fan base got smaller from the first movie. I mean, this isn't even making the total of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, right? And it had about the same opening weekend. So that's pretty bad. I love this franchise. I love Andy Serkis as Caesar. I really wanted them to keep making Apes films, but I don't see them making a fourth film after this. I just don't see... You wouldn't make any profit. Let's say they make a fourth film and they only spend $100 million on it. Is it even going to make this worldwide? I don't think so. Is it even going to, that's the thing. I mean, would its opening weekend even be this? I mean, they released this in 4,100 theaters, so yeah, unfortunate with this. I thought this was going to be a bigger hit. I thought word of mouth was going to carry it, but franchise fatigue is a thing. Let's get back to Dunkirk, though. I got a little tangent there. Okay, so Dunkirk's made $300 million worldwide on a $100 million budget. Now, the budget was originally $150 million, but I read because of a tax rebate, Nolan was able to get it down to $100. Not sure how true that is, so let's say 120. Let's meet him in the middle somewhere, about 120, 125 million. Okay, so they have marketing in this, so... they probably have $175, $180 million in this movie because they spent a lot of money on marketing. This had a pretty big marketing campaign. For Christopher Nolan, this is actually doing better than Interstellar in the weekend drops right now. The second weekend drop for Interstellar was 40%, which was better than Dunkirk's second weekend. But the third weekend drop was 45%. Now, to be fair, after that, it had this amazing weekend where it only dropped, it had a 2% boost. So I don't think that's going to happen with Dunkirk. But still, Dunkirk's third weekend drop was only a very small 33%. And after the second weekend drop of 47%, I was kind of wondering if the movie was front-loaded, and a lot of people who saw it already, that wanted to see it, saw it. But this small drop of 33% shows this movie's got a long ways to go. That's really not bad. I mean, it's not crazy to think that next weekend this could make $10 million, and after that. So $150 million domestic is in the bag for this. How much more than that? I don't know. I don't think it's going to get to Interstellar's total of $188 million. But let's see. Let's see if it makes I think $160 million to $170 million isn't out of the question for this right now. Like if I had to tap out, I'd say $165 million for Dunkirk. The foreign box office, I'm not sure how far it's been released yet everywhere, but if this can make, I mean, if the budget's only this and they have about 180 million in it, then they probably should have broke even this weekend. That 300 million was probably the break even point. So I'd say this movie's broke even now. I could be wrong, but that seems about right. I'd say Nolan broke even. So that's pretty crazy. And if this film can make 450 to 500 million worldwide, if not more, then it's going to make some profit for the studio. Interstellar made the studio like 48 million in profit, and it made 680 mil worldwide, but it was very expensive and Nolan got a lot of money for it. So if this film makes the studio 40, 50 million, they're going to be happy because this film's going to get a shitload of Oscar nominations, like 10, 12 Oscar noms. It could win Best Picture. It's not out of the question. This could very much win Best Picture. Nolan could win Best Director. So the video sales are going to be huge on this. So they might make another 100 million on video. So Christopher Nolan does it again. I mean, this is a period film and a war film. This is doing, it's kind of reminding me of The Revenant, how The Revenant broke out. But, to bring in this opening weekend, but this holds very strong. It shows that the word of mouth is a lot better than what I was thinking maybe it was. If they keep having those small declines, this film's definitely going to make 165 million, if not more. If it makes 500 million worldwide, you just need to call this a straight-up hit. So, Christopher Nolan does it again. I mean, it's not one of his bigger movies. It's not going to make Inception, Interstellar money, 675 million, 825, and then the two Batmans, but it's going to be right behind there. It's going to be right behind these movies, and considering its budget is a lot lower, and it's a war drama, and it's not a big sci-fi epic, or it didn't look like your typical blockbuster, it's hard to, and it didn't, the biggest actors, are Tom Hardy, and Mark Rylance, and they're not like the biggest box office stars in the world. And the film didn't really rely on them to market it. It just kind of used Christopher Nolan's name and Dunkirk, the event, and that was about it. That's all they really advertised and marketed, and it worked out for them. It worked out for them phenomenally. And so I'm going to say that they've broke even now, and we're in the profit range. The studio's going to be making profit beginning next weekend and from that point on. So good for Dunkirk, good for Warner Brothers, good for Christopher Nolan. I think a lot of people thought Christopher Nolan lost a lot of his name recognition, and, this isn't doing Inception numbers, but it isn't the same kind of movie. I mean, is there another director that could have made a film like this that would be doing this well? I mean, this well specifically? I don't think so. I really don't think there's anyone else in Hollywood that could have pulled this off. Maybe a couple other guys could have. Like Clint Eastwood with American Sniper, how he brought in those numbers or something, or maybe Spielberg, but it just shows, once again, Nolan's one of the only directors that can make original films that make a profit, and he can get budgets like this and they make a profit. A studio can give this guy 100 million and not have to worry. And you can't say that about a lot of other people. So that's amazing. So kudos to Dunkirk. Before we get to number one, let's knock out some of the other films real quick. Detroit. This is not good. This is not a good weekend. Detroit, I think they went wide too early. I really do. I mean, they released it in 20 theaters, and it brought in 350,000, right? That's not bad. Then they went from that to 3,000 theaters, and it only did 7 million. You have to understand, 7 million in 3,000 theaters is shit. Even if the word of mouth is good on this film, and the budget being only 34 million is very conservative, and let's say they spent 30 mil on marketing. Let's say they have 65 million in this. This film could make a profit, but look at Zero Dark 30. Zero Dark 30 opened to 24 million and made 130 mil worldwide on a 40 mil budget. And even The Hurt Locker cost 15 million and made 50 mil worldwide. And they released that during summer, and that film was never in more than 535 theaters, The Hurt Locker. The Hurt Locker never had a really wide release. So, okay, factor that in. 3,000 theaters is a lot. Catherine Bigelow, the event, the hype for this movie. I mean, I don't even think this is going to pass its budget domestically. I think this will probably tap out at 30 million or a little under. I think they just went wide too early. They got too excited last weekend and from the reviews that I think they jumped the gun, because that isn't a good opening. I mean, the good opening for this would have been 15 million or a little bit more than that. This is like a 7 million opening. Like I said, even with good word of mouth, they're not going to make much more than that budget. this isn't some film that's going to branch out, because I mean, 7 mil and 3,000, that's the bare bones. That's terrible. That's such a wide release. Jesus Christ. Why did they go that wide? They could have released this in... I would have went to like 500 theaters and then 1,000 and then seen how that went and let the word of mouth build up a little bit. I mean, they went straight from this to opening weekend. I mean, did they think this was going to open at like 20 million or something? And don't get me wrong, it could have. It could have branched out, but... during the summertime... Why is this even released right now? It feels like a weird time to release this movie. This film makes so much more sense to me in, like, November or September, October or something later in the fall. Why would you release this during summer, in the middle of summer, too, and at the end of summer when all this shit's coming out? I don't get this. I haven't seen this movie yet. It's getting good reviews. A lot of people are hating it, though, and saying it's propaganda. Other people are loving it. I don't know. I'll have to see it and review it myself, but, it's probably going to get some Oscar nominations. I could definitely see that, especially with the subject matter and how much the Academy loves stuff like this. But that isn't a good opening weekend. There's no way to spend that into a good opening weekend. That's pretty bad, considering how wide they went. And it makes it look like the studio got way too ambitious to release this. That theater, that number's going to drop big time next. At least it should. They should decrease the theater count considerably from that. That was way too wide. I mean, what the fuck? Did they think this was going to open bigger than that? I mean, what were they thinking? It's one of those questions. I don't know what they were thinking. Baby Driver's doing great. I didn't think it was going to make 100 million, but it's scratching there. It's going to make it. It's at 97 million. It's definitely going to make 100 million. I think it might tap out 100, 102. $34 million budget. Let's say 30 mil marketing. 154 million worldwide, baby. And it's not done yet. This thing's probably going to make 170 mil worldwide if it keeps going. It could do even better than that. So easily Edgar Wright's biggest hit. It's Edgar Wright's first film to pass $100 million domestically or worldwide. Before this, his highest grossing film was Hot Fuzz at 80 million. This is a hit. And Sony made this. This is a Sony film, so it has to be said Sony had another hit this summer. They need more of this kind of stuff, where they make a lower budget film that ends up being a little hit that could... You know, honestly, if Edgar Wright would have even known better, this might have even kicked off a franchise. I don't think they will make a franchise out of it, but he honestly could have made a sequel to this if he had done the movie a little differently. But still, at the end of the day, to have a $100 million original film by a cult director that's not really a big box office draw, and... I mean, I think the cast helped. I think having Kevin Spacey and John Hamm and all that really helped with the marketing, but 20 mil opening weekend to 100 mil domestic, that's good word of mouth, man. I mean, Baby Driver did not have... It hasn't had one drop that was above 36%. 36, 33, 30, 34, 35. So the movie's had great holds. The movie's never had a 40% drop. People are really enjoying this movie. It got rave reviews. Once again, this is going to get... I could see this getting some Oscar noms. I think film editing and sound mixing are in the bag for nominations. And yeah, this is terrific. This is kind of like Sony's Get Out or something. Like it's not as low budget as that film or Split. Those are both Blumhouse, but still, you can't say this isn't doing well. So kudos to Edgar Wright and to Sony for pulling this off. Okay, let's check Pirates of the Caribbean real quick. See where that's at. 780 mil worldwide. I've heard they have over $300 million in this film. I don't know how much profit they've made. Transformers, let's see. 583 million worldwide. That is not good. That is not good for a Transformers film with $17 million budget. That's by far the lowest grossing Transformers film. The first film did better than that, $700 million. Each Transformers film's made over $200 million domestic. I think this is finally the time Michael Bay is going to leave the franchise, because this is not good numbers. These are actually terrible numbers for Transformers. The last two films made over $1 billion, and this film's scratching to make $600 million. So yeah, even with the Asian markets boosting this is not... This just isn't good for a Transformers film. Another franchise, that wouldn't be so bad, but Transformers, no. That's $1 billion franchise. But just like Pirates of the Caribbean, they didn't take care of it. Cars 3, this is a film that has a $175 million budget. Yeah, this still hasn't broke even, because they definitely had money in marketing. Merchandise, though, this film's going to make Disney and Pixar billions of dollars, because the Cars merchandising is insane. But still, this is one of Pixar's lowest grossing films. It's the lowest grossing Cars film. It's actually doing a lot worse than the last two movies. Even domestically, it's not doing as well as the last Cars film. The last Cars film, yeah, Cars 2 made 191 million and 560 million worldwide. This film's not even coming close to that. So for Pixar, I'm not saying this is a bomb, but it kind of is a bomb. And it's not a disaster, but it's kind of like, why did you make Cars 3? This just confirms to me they made this movie to sell toys and merchandise to a new generation of kids with the Cars franchise. That they didn't give a fuck about making a great movie. And I hate this because I love Pixar, but it's like, Jesus Christ. Like, Moana was so much better last year, and like Zootopia than Finding Dory was. And like this year again, it's like Pixar's coming out and like Cars 3, really? You think anyone wanted that? God damn, The Big Sick. I brought this up before. They have more than $30 million in this film. This film cost like $8 million, and they purchased it for like $19 million, and then they put a lot of money into marketing. They have like $30-40 million in this film, if not more. So this total $33 million is not great. They haven't broke even on this film yet, and I think they thought this film was going to be a $100 million hit. I really do. I think when the reviews came out and this was getting raved on, it seemed like it was going to be like a Juno or something, or a Knocked Up, and like, man, this could be a film that makes $100 million. I mean, once again, a film that's probably going to get Oscar nominations, but I think they went wide too early. Once again, look at this, because when they weren't going wide, the film was doing really well. I mean, it made $1 million in 71 theaters. Then all of a sudden, they boosted it to 2,600, and ever since then, it just hasn't done that great. Sometimes they go wide too early, man. You can't jump the gun. They put all of their money in one basket and thought, wow, this is going to go be a hit. Everyone's going to go see this, and it didn't catch on. It doesn't mean that people dislike this movie, but, you know, it's how you handle the release of a movie that's just as important as the making of the film and the marketing of the film. The release date is essential to a lot of this stuff. I think they should have waited to release this later in the year again, and I think they went wide too early again, and, yeah, they're not making a lot of profit off this film, unfortunately. I wish they were, because I've heard great things about this movie, and I support films like this over big blockbuster franchises, but it is what it is. The Big Sick is not the big hit that they thought it was going to be. And the studio definitely thought that, because they put a lot of money into it. They thought that was really going to break out. Guardians 2, let's check that real quick. 861 million worldwide. Hasn't really changed from last weekend. I'd say that movie's pretty tapped out. I'd say it's at the end of its run. We're pretty much done with that. Alright, Atomic Blonde. Let's check that real quick. Pretty big second week drop, 54%. It's pretty steep, actually. So I'd say this one's wrapping up here soon. It could make 50 mil domestic. I don't see it, though. So this really is going to have to rely on the foreign box office to carry this, like if they can make 100 million worldwide or do John Wick numbers. That's all we're going to have to hope for. Alright, let's get to the big one, motherfuckers. Dark Tower. So the Dark Tower video I did the other day, I would have never thought that was going to get the hits it's gotten. It's gotten like 16,000 hits in 3 days. Turns out there was a lot of people that were very interested in this movie. I thought it was very funny, because if you're a fan of the books, 19 is actually kind of relevant to the books. So it's funny that this film had 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then its opening weekend was 19,500,000. Now, to this movie's credit, it actually didn't open as bad as people were predicting on Friday. Because when the Friday numbers came in, the movie made $7 million, and a lot of people thought it was just going to drop to nothing after that and come in at about like 15-16 million. So the movie didn't drop that bad from day-to-day grosses. Like, so, you know, this brought in, let's round it off. Let's say 20 million, right? Now, is this going to be a Baby Driver 20 million, where this film holds on to 100 million? No. No, it's not. I'd say that, let's see, this is in 3,451 theaters. The budget's 60 million, and we know that they put 6 million into reshoots. And we know that they have at least 50 million in, let's say 30 million in marketing. Now, I did read stuff where Sony and MRC said the way that this deal was set up, kind of like Valerian, is that they only put so much money in each, so if this film makes a certain amount of profit for the studio, like if one of them makes 20 million, then they're getting their money back. So, that doesn't mean, you know, like you're saying, oh, so they'll probably make a sequel to this, and the TV show's going to happen with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. Let me make this clear to you guys. That TV show and sequel movie, it's not happening. And it's especially not happening with Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba. It might be happening with different actors and with a different crew. Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey are not going to stay on a franchise that where this is going to get Razzie nominations. Matthew McConaughey's probably going to get a Razzie nomination for his performance in this as Randall Flagg. Idris Elba's been getting pretty good reviews for this, but even so, Idris Elba's not a box office star. He's not at all. Star Trek, he's in that movie. That was the lowest grossing one. Jungle Book, him being in that had nothing to do with the box. These are all voice acting roles. He had nothing to do with that. Beast of No Nation, one of my favorite films of the last decade. I thought he deserved an Oscar nom in that movie. That didn't do well. All of his movies that do well, like, are franchise films, but Idris Elba's not a box office star. This is why I don't get them casting him as Roland. I love Idris Elba, but, like, he has no box office pull. Matthew McConaughey really has no box office pull. Interstellar did well a lot because of Nolan. Wolf of Wall Street, that was Scorsese. He's barely in that movie. Sing was Illumination. All of his, like, films that he leads himself, they don't do that great. He hasn't really led a hit film on his own in years. You know, like, Dallas Buyers Club was a hit because it was so cheap. But these guys aren't big stars, right? And the movie itself, I mean, here's the thing. Like, this film's getting shit on. And people are hating it. Fans are hating it. Some of you like it. Some of you in the comments said you liked it. But you have to understand, this film's getting shit reviews. And it's getting hated on by a lot of people. And it's getting a lot of bad press. And there's all the drama coming out behind the scenes. I don't know why Idris Elba, an actor of his pedigree, or McConaughey, would sign up to a fucking TV show after this. That makes no sense. There's no way McConaughey's going to go do a True Detective-esque, I'm going to go do 10, 12 episodes of a Dark Tower TV show. And there's no fucking way Idris Elba's doing that, too. And I know Elba started on TV with The Wire, and he does Luther. But The Wire and Luther are both very critically acclaimed. True Detective was very acclaimed and popular. Where are they going to go from here? Especially with how they end this movie. The way they end this movie, they do such a bad job of setting up a sequel or a new franchise or where to go with this. I mean, this is a sequel to the original novels. They took the ending of the last book of the series, and now they're having Roland go back again with the horn because they're doing a sequel, which is what people told me. You know what? We call that fan fiction. We call that fan fiction. If another writer is writing a story that someone else created and he's writing his sequel, this is fan fiction. Stephen King didn't write the sequel. This isn't the sequel book in the series. This is a studio that found a convoluted way to try to explain how they could mesh a bunch of books together and plot lines because they didn't want to do the franchise proper, where they did a movie per book, or they did the more obvious thing, a TV series from the beginning. Why didn't they put the 60 mil into a Netflix, HBO, or some TV series, FX or some shit? And they probably could have got Elba and McConaughey. Tom Hardy's on an FX show. Instead, they're in this disaster of a film. Elba and McConaughey are going to get as far away as possible from this. They're not going to stick around with this. There's no way. Ron Howard's going to get away from this. Everyone who's involved in this movie is going to run away from this. Okay, this is abysmal. They can't make a sequel that's going to be a hit. The sequel would do worse than this. Its opening weekend would be lower. This is an awful opening weekend to start a franchise. This isn't a franchise starting opening weekend. You can't even pull in 20 million with all the Dark Tower fans. Even this opening weekend's not awful. This film's not going to make 50 mil domestic. It won't pass its budget. Worldwide, I don't know how it'll do. That's up in the air. This could be a hit at the foreign box office. So we have yet to see if this is really going to do well or not. But even if the studios make their money back, there's no financial reason to go forward with the sequel. If your sequel's just going to open to 15, 16 million, there's no reason to make it. And you'd have to put more money into it. You'd have to make the sequel for $100 million. This is Dark fucking Tower. And if they do a TV series, they're probably not going to get Elba and McConaughey, so it's just going to confuse people, and they're going to have to start over again and reboot the whole thing. And it's going to make people who don't know where Dark Tower is and saw the movie even more confused. This is a disaster. This is a disaster. There's no other way to spend this. Even if this opening weekend isn't as bad as it could have been, it's not great. And the It movie's probably going to open to 50 million or more, right? So that just shows you what you can bring into a Stephen King franchise. And I think It, they have 40 million in that movie. So it's not even close to this. Basically, they didn't want to make a $150 million film that could have been a blockbuster and turned into a franchise. And they didn't want to make a low-budget, like $30, $40 million Western-type film with the gunslinger that could have been a hit. Instead, they tried to meet it somewhere in the middle. They put enough money into it to give it a bunch of shitty CGI. And then they ripped this poster off from Inception and Doctor Strange, which is hilarious how much they took from those movies. Even in the marketing, they were redundant. It's so ridiculous. Which Sony's whole issue is redundancy. It's what they always do. Emoji Movies just a rip-off. This movie's marketing was trying to rip off Christopher Nolan films. I'm not saying the film was trying to rip off Nolan, but the marketing was so like, hey, look at this. This is like this movie that you saw. This is so clearly the Inception posters and the Doctor Strange. It's hilarious. But, I mean, I don't even know if this will make 40 mil domestic. This isn't going to hold well weekend to weekend. And the foreign box office is their biggest, they're going to have to rely entirely on that. And let's say at best, this makes 200 million worldwide. If it does that, they're still not going to go forward with the sequel. There is no sequel happening to this film. 200 million worldwide wouldn't be financially enough for them to benefit making a sequel because they're going to have so much money in it. And they're probably not going to get these actors back. Elba's a guy who's... I mean, Elba might come back in McConaughey, but I just don't see it. The director got... he got his movie taken from him. Tom Rothman worked on this in the editing room. McConaughey's getting some of the worst reviews of his career. Why would he stick with this? They're telling him he's bad, right? And then Idris Elba, I mean, all he's getting is, hey, Idris Elba's good in this movie because he's Idris Elba, but it's not that great. So at the end of the day, like, for a franchise starter... Even if this makes a profit, it's not going to be anything that kicks off a movie series. And I don't see at all how they could make a TV series after this. People are saying this is like a pilot for a TV show. It sure didn't feel like a pilot. They combined a lot of elements from the previous books, and they have a big finale where, like, they pretty much wrap up the story. It feels like they finished the story. Like, it wasn't at all a movie that set up all these future plot lines and stuff at all. They actually did a terrible job with that. Anyone who sees this movie will feel like, oh, they wrapped the story up. And then, yeah, are they going to get this audience to go to television? I mean, it's... God, and they're saying, like, they're going to do it on AMC or something? What an awful idea. They should have just started as a TV series. You're going to confuse people. You can't start... This is what Clone Wars did, the Star Wars Clone Wars. They released that shitty movie, and it was just a pilot for a show. This isn't a pilot for a TV show. This is a 95-minute long movie that has a beginning, middle, and third act and a story that begins and ends. And people are going to see it without any idea of thinking about a TV show. Most people don't know this is a sequel to the books because most people haven't read the books. So when they go see this, they're just going to be like, oh, okay, this is what the story is. That's just, once again, this fan fiction. This was glorified fan fiction. This is big-budget fan fiction. This is not The Dark Tower. This is not King's The Dark Tower. Not even close. This is a generic sci-fi genre western movie. This is the same thing as every other bad franchise starter, like a I'm Number 4. Any film, it just has brand recognition. And with all that brand recognition, they weren't even able to bring $20 million in. So, I'm not going to call this a bomb because from what I read, Sony and MRC don't have to make a lot of money to make a profit off this. Also... The foreign box office could be good, but this is a franchise killer. Let's make this clear. This is a franchise killer. These actors are not staying with this franchise, and if they do, that would be hilarious. It makes no sense from a business standpoint for either actor to stay with this franchise. Especially on television. Why would McConaughey go take TV money? He's a movie actor. He makes millions. Why would he go take TV money to be on a fucking TV show after this? That makes no sense. Idris Elba, even his film career is kicking off. Why the fuck would he go do a Dark Tower TV show for, what, how many years would that be? A few years that show would be on? Not happening. Just not happening. If they do that, they're going to recast the leads, which is going to confuse more people. And there's not a sequel happening to this film. Just sorry. And I don't want there to be a sequel, but even if I wanted there to be one, it's not happening. Ron Howard, like I said, he's going to be cringing about this because he never got the movie he wanted to make. He wanted to make a much bigger budget thing with HBO and all that. He had Javier Bardem, I think, as Roland. McConaughey's not going to stay near this. This is just bad for his... I mean, he's getting made fun of for being in this. He's not going to... His agent's going to be telling him, we need to get away... All right, well, I just thought if I was a man in black, people would like that, they'd think it was all right. But no. No, the kid, I guess, it might help his career the most, the kid being in this, because he's a good actor and people will notice him. But, they took a 2.5-hour movie, and after bad test screenings, cut it down to 95 minutes. So it's resulted in a film that's got a pretty crappy budget that makes the film look cheap. And the opening weekend, I feel like this opening weekend is front-loaded. I think that's all Stephen King Dark Tower fans that went. I think that's all that numbers is. And I think after this weekend, this film's just going to disappear and drop, and no one's going to talk about it by the end of the year. And these actors are going to try to... They're pretty much going to pretend they were never in it. Because you understand, this is like Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin, it wasn't a total bomb. It performed very badly, but they still made a lot of money off the merchandise. The studio still made money off that movie down the road with home video sales and stuff. But it was so bad that they weren't going to make a sequel. They weren't going to be able to just keep the franchise going, and the actors weren't going to stick around. Same thing here. Like, this film is such a joke and so unpopular, there's no way that Sony, although they may be dumb enough, but it makes no financial sense to go forward with this franchise. So I think this is a franchise killer. It's one and done with the Dark Tower. We're not getting that TV show. We're not getting the movies. We're not going to see the books we wanted to see adapted. They tried to mix 4 of the different books together in here, and then their whole explanation was it was a sequel. That's what it was. It was a sequel. This is the final journey for Roland and Jake, so he can make the right decisions this time. That's so bullshit. That's such bull. I can't believe anyone can be okay with that even. That's a fan of the books. That's them telling you, hey, we're going to go write a fan fiction sequel. We're so smart and understand this material that we can write a bullshit sequel and tell our version of the story because the original brilliant versions written by King over that series of novels, we're not going to make that. We're going to do our own version as a movie because we can, because we're that intelligent. And then they make a really crappy movie that's 95 minutes. You know, I didn't think about the next book in the series. A 95-minute long movie, that's a pretty short book. That means the last book in the Dark Tower after the final novel. And the final few novels are pretty dense. That means, let's say they wrote another book. That means they wrote this really short book that just ripped off a bunch of stuff from the previous books. And the people who keep bringing the sequel thing up to me like that's some fucking point. Okay, let's say a guy went and wrote a sequel to Lord of the Rings and called it Lord of the Rings. And then he just ripped off a bunch of story elements and character names from the Lord of the Rings trilogy and then mashed them together and said, hey, it's not Lord of the Rings, though. It's a sequel to Lord of the Rings. That's all they did. I don't care if it's a multiverse thing and there's a multi-universe and Roland can be infinite and stuff like that. That's not an excuse for a shitty movie. That's just a lazy, convoluted way to try and explain a movie that makes no sense. Now, even if that was the director's premise, that's still ridiculous. That means the director thought that he could make a proper sequel to the novels. So instead of just adapting the novels the way they were, which were very dense, intricate stories with layers and meta aspects and characterization that really works, they thought they were so good that they can condense it down into a brilliant sequel, and some fans of the novels are telling me that's good enough. So, okay, so I'm just baffled by that. I'm baffled. It's like a lot of people have bitched about Game of Thrones the last few years. It's kind of felt like fan fiction, fan service since D&D have taken over from Martin and the books. They just write stuff that feels like fan service. It doesn't really feel like Song of Ice and Fire anymore. Dorne doesn't feel like Song of Ice and Fire. Jon Snow, you know, he's just Kit Harington. You know, it's kind of a joke. They're clearly pushing their favorite actors. And I still like Game of Thrones, but I get that criticism. That's all this is. This isn't the Dark Tower. This isn't a continuation. This is fan fiction. And it's bad fan fiction, and they think you guys are so stupid and so and so hungry for anything of this franchise, you'll just take anything, and you don't care about them nurturing and taking care of it and adapting. And I don't care if they make sequels, that's cool. But if you're gonna make a sequel, then make a sequel to the gun. You know, make the sequels then and go through the original books. Make the Gunslinger, right? Make the novels and change little things. That's fine. They mix together tons of elements from the novels, and Roland starting with the horn, they're able to jump around, which is fine with me, but the jumping around means they cut so much stuff out. I mean, they're pretending like they're not going to bring in characters that are great characters, like Eddie and stuff. They're not going to bring characters in from the books. They cut everything out. So as a sequel, it's terrible. They cut everything out. They cut out all the characters that we love throughout the series, and there's no way they're going to make those sequel movies that flesh it out. Like, oh, well, we have to make this first film that kind of sucks, that needs to get audiences. They didn't get audiences with this movie, and they didn't build any hype for a TV show. All they did was get a #1 opening weekend because all the other films have been out. Dunkirk, it could have passed this. This could have opened at number 2. So once again, Sony, outside of Spider-Man Homecoming, which was Marvel's work, and Baby Driver, they have this film, which is not impressive, the Emoji Movie, which is not blowing anyone out of the water, and they had a couple other films that came out this year that were huge disasters. So Sony's just not... And then even like The Mummy here, look at The Mummy, which I don't know if this was Sony. It might have been. I can't remember who released this. But 400 million worldwide, just passed it on a $125 million budget. That's all Tom Cruise foreign box office. That's all Tom Cruise carrying it with his name recognition. But they're not going to have that. McConaughey and Idris Elba aren't international box office stars. Their films aren't big international hits. So I don't know how much this will even do with the foreign box. It might do well in China. Maybe this will be one of those like Warcraft things where Chinese audiences fucking love this weird movie. But this is a film that could have made 400, 500 million worldwide and could have been a huge hit had they handled it right. They could have even done it for 60 million, like I said. They could have made a lower budget film, but they did everything wrong. They hired the wrong director. I mean, they hired a guy who never even made a big movie before. They didn't do anything right with this franchise, and they killed it. They didn't nurture it, and they packaged it, and they sold it, and they were too concerned with if they could make Dark Tower that they didn't stop to think if they should. And that's the situation we're in. This was a studio that just wanted to make a movie, and they didn't think about how to make the movie. Valerion's made 65 million worldwide on a 177 mil budget. From what I've read, this film didn't lose any money of how Besson set up the business ends of it, that the studio, because he has so many people split the money, so I'm not sure. It sounds like some shitty accounting, like Besson pocketed like $50 million or something. I'm not sure, but let's go check one more weekend, and then we can wrap this video up. I mean, let's go check last weekend to see if we missed any updates. Nope. Seems like that's about it. There's really nothing else to cover. Let's see if Boss Baby finally made that 500 million. Right at the tip, 497. Yep, Boss Baby made more than the Dark Tower movie. Jesus Christ. I do think it's going to be a big hit, but this whole Stephen King cinematic universe thing people thought was going to happen, not happening. I don't think The Stand's probably going to happen. They've been holding The Stand up for years. They were supposed to make a Stand trilogy like 2 years ago, and they're still holding it up. So the big losers of the weekend, Detroit, not a great opening weekend. Atomic Blonde, bad drop. And Dark Tower, very mediocre to crappy opening. But like I said, leave me your opinion in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something here. I'm just trying to clarify you guys. This is not a great opening weekend. Something like 30 million would have been really good, or 29 million. That would have been impressive. The winners of the weekend, Dunkirk and Girls Trip. And Spider-Man. Spider-Man's actually doing good and holding better in this time of the month than it was during the competition-heavy summer. So having said all that, like, comment, and subscribe if you find this video later. Thank you to everyone who's watched this with me right now live. I hope you enjoyed this journey. Sorry if it went on a little bit long, but we have a lot of stuff to cover this week. There's a lot of movies out. They released, there's like fucking movies coming out every damn weekend. Jesus Christ. But, anyway, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. And go see the movies that you want to see. Support what you want to support. I'm not telling you what to go see. I'm just trying to show you what studios are doing and what they're up to. But that's what it is. Alright, bye guys.